I do all sorts of things, but over the last couple months, I've been showing you guys lots of awesome animals that we have here at the museum because they're one of my favorite things to learn about. So we've seen all sorts of stuff. We've seen Arkansas native animals. We've learned about what animals like to eat. We saw some skulls and bones. We learned about spooky animals. In October, we met a snake, some cockroaches. And today, some of you might think that we're back on the spooky animal train because, as Thomas said, we are talking about bugs. Now, Thomas already helped me out. I'm going to be saying bugs throughout this program, but we are going to make a distinction between insects and arachnids. And so even though I'll be saying the word bugs and kind of talking about them all as one, insects and arachnids do have some very different things about them that we're going to cover. But bugs is a lot easier to say than insects and arachnids over and over again. So I'm very excited for you guys to meet these guys. Now, some of us I know are not huge fans of bugs. You might be getting the heebie-jeebies and the creepy crawlies just thinking about me showing you bugs, but we cannot avoid the fact that there are a lot of bugs in the world and that they are incredibly important to every environment that we have here on Earth. So even if you're not a huge fan of bugs, I hope that by the end of our half hour or so here, you guys will at least have a little bit better appreciation for these guys, or at least think that something I said about them is kind of cool. Now, a couple weeks ago, we showed a lot of skulls and bones, and I called those things biofacts, biological artifacts. Now, when an animal passes away, we can still utilize its bones and skulls for education, learning about cool things, and we can do a very similar thing with bugs. Thomas, if you want to bring the close-up cam to our beetle specimen over here. Now, bugs are a little bit different. These guys do not have bones and skulls. They have what we call exoskeletons. Their skeletons are on the outsides of their bodies. So when these guys pass away, we don't have skulls and bones that we can keep. But we can preserve them and kind of keep them in little frames like Thomas is about to show you guys right here. And there's a reason that I wanted to start off with a beetle biofact. Thomas is going to get you guys a nice, good shot there. A beetle is an excellent example of what we call an insect. So that's one half of our bug equation today, insects. And one of the things we're going to talk about is the things that make insects unique and different from arachnids. And my beetle specimen here is a great example. There's two things that we're going to look at, the legs and the body parts. If you look at our specimen, you can see that our beetle has 6 legs, 3 on each side. And so that's a really good and easy way to tell an insect apart from an arachnid. And then if you look at the body parts, it's a little bit difficult on this beetle, but you might be able to distinguish 3 body parts: a front, a head, a middle, a thorax, and a back part, the abdomen. The abdomen is the part that has those kind of yellow casing over it. So insects have 6 legs and 3 body parts: head, thorax, and abdomen. And that's going to help us tell things like beetles and butterflies and ants and wasps apart from things like spiders and tarantulas and scorpions. And the other reason that I wanted to start with beetles, and our first live animal is also beetles, is because there are a lot of beetles in the world. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. I want you guys to think to yourself, how many kinds of beetles, how many types or species of beetles are there in the world? Some of you might be lowballing it. You think, 50, maybe 50 different types of beetles. Some of you might go a little higher, maybe say 400. Some of you might think it's a lot. Some of you might say 5,000 different types of beetles. I promise you, whatever number you're thinking of is lower than the actual number, and we are still discovering them every day. To date, science knows about 400,000 different types or species of beetles. That's more types of beetles than all the other types of animals added together. So there is a gigantic number of beetles, and they are, for that reason, an excellent example of insects. And to that end, my first live animals are going to be 2 beetles in my little presentation space here. So we'll get kind of a wider shot of them here, and then Thomas will come in for a little bit more of a close-up later. Everyone say hello to my two, hello, hi, death feigning beetles. Now I want to pick these guys up and give you a good look. Now, some of you might be a little concerned. It might seem like I've killed my beetles. They've gone stiff, their legs are sticking up in the air. But I promise you, they are just fantastic actors. There we go. White one got up, and the blue one, there we go. So these guys are called death feigning beetles. And what that means is they like to play dead. Kind of like when we talked about opossums. The main way that these guys keep themselves safe is by pretending to be dead. So you can see when I picked them up, they went super stiff, and even when I put them down on their back, they stayed there for a second. But these guys are very used to being handled by us. They're very used to being picked up and looked at. And so these guys are able to kind of overcome their fear really quickly and flip back over. Usually, actually, the white one here stays a little more scared for longer, but he's feeling very brave today, so I'm proud of him. So Thomas is going to get you guys a nice close shot here. We've got our more white beetle and our more blue beetle there. And you guys might notice that they're in a little tub of sand. I wanted to mimic their natural environment as much as possible. These guys are found in deserts. They are desert-dwelling beetles, and they're found in deserts right here in the United States. In the southwestern states like Arizona, Nevada, and California, these guys can be found in the Sonoran and Mojave deserts. And if you know anything about deserts, you know it's a hard place to live. It's really difficult, one, to find water, and two, to find food. So these guys have very cool adaptations, things that they do and things about them that help them survive in those super harsh environments. You can see, obviously, that one of them is a little kind of dusty white color, and the other one's kind of a dusty blue. They have that color because they're actually covered in kind of a wax, almost like candle wax. And that wax helps them keep or retain moisture that they get from their food. So even though these guys aren't getting a lot of water, they're able to really keep it inside themselves. We're constantly losing water, sweating, all that kind of stuff. These guys do not lose a lot of water because there's not a lot of water to come by. If you're paying attention, you can also see that these guys have some lovely fruits and veggies here. These guys do eat plants and whatever fruits they can come across, but being in the desert, it usually doesn't pay to be a picky eater. So although these guys will eat plants, which are an excellent source of water, if they come across a dead bug or another dead animal, they'll also feed on that too. They're what we call omnivores. We talked about this with our opossums. They're going to eat plants and meat that they come across, and they're not going to be super picky because they need that protein and they need that water wherever they can get it. Now, one of the other things you have to worry about in the desert is other animals. Even though there's not a ton of things living there, there's still other animals that want to eat you. And these guys have one more defense beyond just playing dead. These guys are also known as ironclad beetles. Now, when I say the word ironclad, some of you might be thinking of Iron Man. Some of you might be thinking of knights in armor and all that kind of stuff. Very hard, tough, steely things. Like I said before, bugs have exoskeletons. Their skeletons are on the outsides. And I'm sure that some of you have squished a bug before, and you know it's pretty easy to do. These guys have an incredibly strong exoskeleton. That's where they get that ironclad name from. It's almost like they're wearing a suit of armor. So not only is it very hard to crush or hurt them, these guys are also really good at falling and staying alive. Because if you're going to go stiff and play dead when you get attacked, there's a good chance you might fall off of something when you do that. You might lose your grip on your plant or rock or whatever you're holding on to. But these guys have such a tough, hard outside that they're able to survive that fall really easily. I also like bringing these guys out to talk about insects because these guys are a fantastic example of a classic insect body plan. We've got 6 legs, 3 on each side, and you can see the 3 different body parts: head in the front, thorax in the middle, abdomen in the back. That's going to get harder and harder to see as we go through our insects, but I promise you they all have it. So everyone say goodbye to our death feigning beetles. These guys are 2 of my favorites. They're such cool and unique animals. Put them back in their little terrarium here. Blue didn't even play dead there. He's getting so brave. In the wild, these guys can potentially play dead for hours. It just kind of depends on how long it takes for them to feel safe. But These guys have been kept by us for a while, and so they're very used to being picked up and handled so they don't get too spooked. Now, the reason that I am changing out my container here, swapping some sand for a little bit of wood chips and leaves, is that we're still doing another insect, but they like a much different environment than a harsh desert environment. Honestly, besides the ocean, probably the most different environment you can get. We are going to see two of our Madagascar hissing cockroaches. Now, you guys have seen cockroaches before with us. I believe we saw cave roaches earlier. But these guys are similar in some ways, but also different enough that I wanted to show them off to you guys. And so these guys are from Africa, specifically the island of Madagascar. And these guys aren't found in deserts, they're found in tropical forests. Lots of moisture, lots of leaves and plants. Our death feigning beetles are probably a little bit jealous of, if I'm being honest. So I wanted to change out and get them a little bit of a different environment here. All right. So again, a good example of an insect. We've got 3 legs on each side, 6 legs. It's a little hard to tell the body parts, but they do have that head, thorax, and abdomen. He's waving his antenna at you right now. And these guys are also helpful for showing off, like I said, those antennae. The female here in particular has some fantastically long antennae. And bugs use these antennae to help them feel their way around their environment. Not only do they help them touch things, but antennae also help them taste and smell things. And if you remember our discussion about cave roaches before, you might be thinking that these guys are looking for basically anything they can come across. We talked about how roaches are excellent omnivores. Not only do they eat fruits and plants, but they'll also eat meat. Now, our Madagascar hissing cockroaches here are actually a little more picky than that. They generally prefer fruits and veggies because those are very abundant. There's lots of them in a tropical rainforest. But if they come across a very protein-heavy meal, maybe a dead animal of some sort, they're probably not going to turn it down. But their preferred food is definitely going to be fruit. And so those antennae help them feel and smell for that fruit, helps them feel and smell all that dead, gross, rotting fruit that's fallen to the ground. And so these guys, like we talked about with the cave roaches, are helping clean up their environment. It's a little thorny branch there. Get that out of the way for you. Now, these guys are similar to our cave roaches, but I also want to highlight a few of their differences. If you remember those guys, you might remember they were bigger and they also had gigantic wings on their back. Madagascar hissing cockroaches do not have wings. They are flightless. They spend most of their time on the ground under rocks and bark, maybe climbing a tree or two. And I did say earlier that this was our girl. And one of the ways that we tell these guys apart, you come here for a second. Ooh, this is our boy. And the reason that I know that is because on his little back part here, he has these 2 little bumps or horns. The males have much bigger, much more pronounced horns than our females. And so that's one of the easy ways we tell these guys apart. He's still pretty young. He's still got some growing to do. Our female's already pretty large. Oops, sorry, buddy. There you go. Now, of course, I'm sure the thing that you're wondering is why do they call them Madagascar hissing cockroaches? And this is one of the last things that I want to highlight about what makes these guys so special. So if you haven't noticed, they're not very intimidating creatures, even if you think they're kind of creepy. They don't run very fast. They don't have a strong bite. So how do they keep themselves safe from predators? Well, it's that hissing part of their name. These guys are able to produce a really loud, sudden hissing sound that sounds like it comes from a much bigger animal than you would expect from these little dudes. And the way that they do that, Thomas, if you want to get a nice shot on our female's abdomen here, you can see these small little black dots all along our female and our male's back here. And these little black dots indicate small little holes called spiracles. Now, you might be thinking, how do little holes in the side of your body help keep you safe from predators? Well, these guys are able to hiss by basically being little bug accordions or whoopee cushions. If you think about how you play an accordion or how you make a whoopee cushion do its thing, you squeeze it together, air rushes out, and you either get music or you know what you get from a whoopee cushion. And so Madagascar hissing cockroaches operate in a very similar way. They will flatten their bodies down, push or expel air out of those holes in their back, those spiracles, and make this really loud hissing sound, kind of like steam escaping. And usually, that big of a sound from that small of an animal is enough to give predators pause and go, hold on, something's not right here. I'm going to leave that alone. So these guys have kind of their own unique and special ways of keeping themselves safe. All right, we're going to say goodbye to our hissing cockroaches here, take them back to their little carrier. And for our third animal, I'm extremely excited to show these guys off to you because these are some of our newest additions to the museum. In the last month or so, we've gotten several new animals. So if you guys get the chance to come check out the museum, highly recommend it. We have new day geckos. We have jeweled mantises, praying mantises, another good insect. And probably my favorite addition, with a very good change of scenery, we have a whole colony of Vietnamese stick insects. Now, I'm sure that you cannot tell where these guys are at the moment, so we're going to really rely on Thomas on that close-up cam to help us find them. So Vietnamese stick insects, or Vietnamese walking sticks, we've got one over here, Thomas, the brown one, the larger one, and we've got Greenie in the back if you want to check them out. These guys are very similar to stick insects that we have in Arkansas, although, of course, they are found in the country of Vietnam, across the world in Asia. We're going all over the world today. And if you couldn't tell, these guys have a very special form of camouflage where they pretend to be sticks. We've got our one friend right here. You want to show off to everybody? Hello, hi. And we've got one back here. This one's a little bit older. She's a brownish color and a little larger. And we've got a little bit younger one back here, kind of greenish and a little bit smaller, although growing very quickly. Oh, there we go, showing off a little bit. So this is a very unique form of camouflage known as mimicry. It's not just blending in with your environment, it's pretending to be an object and hopefully throwing predators off your scent. So you guys can see that these guys are very convincing sticks, and they really commit to the act. If they're walking around looking for leaves to eat, because these guys are herbivores, they'll even slightly sway in the wind to make it look like they're a branch, just kind of swaying around. And if they're really confronted by a predator, one that won't leave them alone, kind of like our death feigning beetles, these guys will go stiff and just kind of fall off the tree, pretending to be essentially a falling stick. Now, that's a pretty drastic response, but these guys are pretty sturdy, and so that's a pretty quick and easy way for them to escape a predator if they don't think they're going to get away. Now, these guys have a really kind of fantastic life that I want to talk to you guys about for just a second. But really quick, before we get to that, I do want to show, it's of course, it's a little bit more difficult than with our roaches and our beetles. We still can see 6 legs, 1, 2, 3 stretched out here, 4, 5, 6. And it's gotten harder and harder to tell our body parts apart. But these guys do have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen because, of course, they are insects. And we're going to see that's a little bit different with our next animal, our arachnid. But on to how these guys live their life. So these guys came to us about a month ago, and they were extremely small. Stick insects grow up really quickly because they don't live very long. They only live about 5 to 7 months. It's a very short amount of time, so you got to get big quickly. And one of the craziest things about stick insects, particularly these guys, is that I can almost guarantee you, I would be willing to bet good money on it, that not only are these 2 stick insects girls, but that most, if not all, of our stick insects here at the museum, 30 or 40 of them, are also girls. How do I know that? Well, these guys have a very special and unique way of making babies. It's this very big word called parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis. I don't expect you to remember that word. It's very long. What you can essentially think of that is as is cloning. These guys are actually able to literally clone themselves. Now, not in a lab, but girl walking sticks are able to lay eggs without a boy around to help them. And those eggs, when those hatch into baby walking sticks, those walking sticks will be exact copies or clones of their mother. So they'll be female. They'll have the exact same DNA. They will be perfect clones of their mother. Now, this is a really good way of creating babies in an environment where it's hard to find mates and it's hard to survive. These guys can make hundreds and hundreds of copies of themselves in the very short amount of time that they have. So out in the wild, it's really rare to find boy Vietnamese walking sticks. And even when you're keeping them in captivity as pets like we do, it's still pretty rare to have them because most of the time the females are probably just going to make clones of themselves, and those are all going to be girls. So one of the craziest life cycles I've ever heard about, but I love talking about it just because it's so weird and so out of what we normally think of as how animals make babies. So, a really fantastic example and a great last insect for us. Everyone, wave goodbye to our stick insects. I see our little green one's kind of waving by herself. All right, I'm going to put these guys on the side. They're just going to hang out on their branch here. They're having a great time pretending to be stick insects, or pretending to be sticks, I should say. All right. And with our last animal, we're going to change gears just a little bit to talk about arachnids. We've said that word a couple times. Now, I've been saying, again, bugs a lot, but we are talking about insects and arachnids. And we're going to see the things that make arachnids a little bit different than insects. Instead of 6 legs, arachnids have 8 legs, 4 on each side. And instead of 3 body parts, head, thorax, and abdomen, they have 2 body parts. The head and the thorax, the front and the middle, are combined together into one piece, the cephalothorax. We can just call it the head. And they have a back bit, an abdomen. So they've got a front and a back, head and abdomen, and 8 legs. Now, arachnids are things like spiders, tarantulas, scorpions, and mites. And we're going to see a nice up-close example of that in just a second here. Get my little presentation tray back out here. Now, I believe that I showed you guys a tarantula when we talked about Arkansas animals. We saw Harry, our Arkansas brown tarantula, but we're going a little bit bigger, which may be good news to some of you, or maybe really bad news to some of you. But she is one of my absolute favorite animals here at the museum, and I say that with no exaggeration. We have the lovely Rosie, our Chilean rose hair tarantula. She might just want to stay on her branch here. There you go. So Rosie is not an Arkansas native like Harry was. She is native to the country of Chile in South America. And as you can see, just a little bit bigger than our Arkansas brown tarantula. Now, Rosie is an excellent example of an arachnid. You can see 4 legs on either side, 2 body parts. We'll see that even better when Thomas brings his close-up camera. And one of the reasons that I wanted to bring out Rosie is because she's got a lot of cool things about her that makes her unique from the insects that we've seen so far, besides just those body parts. So tarantulas are really cool arachnids, and they're even a little bit different than normal spiders. I'm sure you guys have seen lots of spiders in your life, probably more than you want to. Tarantulas operate a little bit differently. Most small spiders that we see will kind of spin a web and hang out in it, wait for food to come by. Tarantulas are quite a bit larger than those spiders, and so they're a little too heavy to hang out in webs. What these guys will do is they will usually hide in little burrows or caves that they'll make for themselves, and they'll put webbing out in front of the burrow. Now, that's not really to help catch their prey. That's more to help them feel when their prey comes by. So when their prey walks by and touches that webbing, these guys will leap out from the burrow, grab onto it, and stab it with their fangs. And these guys are venomous. They will inject a venom into their prey. Now, for us, it's not very harmful because that venom is more for killing smaller things like crickets and other bugs, maybe a small mouse or a lizard, but it can still produce a pretty painful reaction in humans. But with their prey, it does a couple things. 1, it paralyzes and kills their prey. And 2, it has digestive juices inside of it. What the heck does that mean? It sounds really gross. Well, basically, these guys digest their prey from the inside. They essentially turn a cricket into a cricket bread bowl with a little soup a bit inside of it. They turn all those cricket insides into soup and they suck it out with a straw-like mouth, which is disgusting, but also kind of cool in my personal opinion. One of the other cool things about tarantulas is, of course, they're much hairier. They're much more hairy. That's the proper word. They're much more hairy than other spiders that we're used to seeing. Those hairs help them feel things, but they also use those hairs for defense. On her abdomen here, her back part, she has hairs that are very irritating and bristly. And she can actually throw those hairs with her back legs a pretty far distance, and that will actually get into her prey, her predator's skin or eyes, whatever's threatening her, and actually help keep her safe while they deal with that very irritating distraction. So even though these guys are kind of scary looking and they do eat other stuff, they still have to keep themselves safe from predators. The last thing I want to tell you about Rosie here is probably one of the coolest facts about her. Rosie is probably our second oldest animal here at the museum. I think that first title probably goes to Eli, our Amazon parrot. I want to say he's in his 40s or 50s. But Rosie here is coming up on him. She is about 30 years old. She's actually about 5 years older than I am. And that's kind of crazy. But one of the even crazier things is that the fact that she's 30 years old lets us know that she is definitely a girl tarantula. Boy tarantulas only live about 2, 3, maybe 5 years. The girls can live to be 20, 30, maybe even 40. We don't actually really have a good idea of how long they can live for. So if you have a tarantula and they make it past their 5th birthday, you've got a girl tarantula. So Rosie has been with us for probably about 25 or 26 of her 30 years. She's very used to being handled. She's very used to meeting people. And so she's absolutely one of my favorite animals to bring out because she's just a trooper and an absolute pro and a great example of an arachnid. Now, before we move on to questions, I do want to bring out one more biofact. Those of you who might be thinking, boy, that's a big tarantula. I'm glad that's as big as they get. Boy, do I have news for you. So, of course, she is a lot larger than Harry, but there are much larger tarantulas out in the world. This is an example of a steely, blue-legged bird-eating tarantula, or we'll just call it a bird-eater tarantula. The bird-eater tarantulas are the largest spiders in the world, and this isn't even the largest one. The Goliath bird-eater probably takes that cake. Even though they're called bird eaters, they don't typically eat birds because, as you can imagine, spiders that are usually on the ground have a hard time catching flying birds. But these guys can eat large mammals, snakes, lizards, and on occasion can catch birds. So even though Rosie's a lot bigger than Harry, they can get even bigger. And you're probably glad that I didn't bring out one of these, at least a live version of it. But I think they're really cool. And of course, something this big is a great example showing off our different parts of an arachnid. 4 legs on each side, 2 body parts. And some people get a little confused when we count the legs because they've got these 2 short little limbs in the front. These are called pedipalps, and they're not actually for walking. They're basically like little spider arms. They help them touch things and move things, and with the boys, even help with making babies. But I'll let you guys research that one for yourself. So thank you guys for joining me, learning about bugs. I hope you weren't too creeped out. At the very least, I hope you have a better appreciation for these guys. And at the very best, I hope you think they're super cool. So at this time, we're going to leave Rosie out here. Nice, good close-up shot of her while we do some questions. I always like hearing you guys' questions, so I'm very much looking forward to what you want to know. And we'll get those questions going in just a second here. Thank you, guys. You look so good.
Let's give a round of applause for Steven.
And for our animals. Woo!
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So if you guys want, go ahead and unmute your mic and ask us what questions you have, and we will get to them to our absolute best ability. Because as Steven said, we really do like your questions.
Now we play the game of Can I Find My Stick Insects? 1, 2.
We're going to do a three-way shot. Me, Steven, and the tarantula.
Thomas has discovered the split screen,
And it's,
he's
it's
all
just fun
about
to play
it.
with. All right, so what questions do we have about some of our wonderful, creepy, crawly critters that we saw today?
They're like, please just get the bugs off the screen.
We've got a question. One of the students wants to know, were spiders alive before dinosaurs?
What was that?
Were spiders alive before dinosaurs?
Oh man, so long since evolutionary history. That is a fantastic question. Oh my goodness. There have been insects and arachnids for an extremely long time. There were certainly insects and arachnids around at the time of the dinosaurs, probably before. However, I don't know if there was something that was like exactly like the tarantulas we have today at the time of the dinosaurs. I don't know if tarantulas as we know them evolved before the time of the dinosaurs or after. So that's a fantastic question. I'm going to do some research on it, and you guys should absolutely do some research on it. So I will say there were definitely insects and arachnids during the time of the dinosaurs, and ones that were probably much bigger. But I don't know about tarantulas specifically. That's a fantastic question, though, and I really want to know the answer to that. Starting off with a hard one. I like it.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Heck yeah.
What's our next question?
I feel like we always get questions about dinosaurs with this group. I like it.
They're pretty awesome.
Need to brush up on my evolutionary history, I guess.
Another question, what is the biggest spider in the world?
So I believe, if we're talking about tarantulas, I believe that honor goes to the Goliath bird eater tarantula. If you want a visual, imagine a plate that you might eat dinner on and spread your fingers out. Generally, people say that a Goliath bird eater with their legs spread out is about the size of a dinner plate. So quite large. However, if we want to get really into the weeds, tarantulas are actually a little bit different than true spiders, like a spider you might see around your house. So in terms of what the largest true spider is, I'm actually not sure. Orb weaver spiders, those ones that weave the really classic webs and sit in the middle, there's some pretty big ones in South America. I don't know if those guys take the cake, but look up some pictures of them if you want to be a little creeped out. So if we're just talking, spiders and tarantulas in general, Goliath bird eater. If we're going to make the distinction between tarantulas and spiders, not actually sure.
Well, and one other thing to consider is timeline, like what era. So potentially spiders could have been much larger a long time ago when there were higher levels of oxygen in the atmosphere.
There were definitely bigger ones.
Yeah, there were
the
bigger
dinosaurs.
insects. So there were potentially some big arachnids too. I just don't know the evolutionary line like you're saying.
I've seen
Man,
lots
you guys are thinking about some awesome stuff
great.
today.
I've seen lots of cool drawings of gigantic dragonflies.
Yeah. Dragonflies you could almost ride. That would be pretty cool.
That'd be super cool.
What's our third question for this this program?
Man, you guys are making me think. I love it.
Another question, what spider lives the longest and how old do they live?
One more time.
What's the oldest, or what spider lives the longest, and how old can it live?
Oh, what spider lives longest? How will it live? That's a great question. So tarantula, we'll just call tarantulas spiders for the purpose of this question. Tarantulas can definitely live the longest, but as we said, usually it's the girl tarantulas. One of the crazy things is Chilean rosehair tarantulas, like Rosie here, have become pretty popular as pets in recent years for people that like to keep those kinds of pets. But they haven't been in the pet trade for long enough for us to really know exactly how long they live. If you go look it up on Wikipedia, I know because I did, it says they live 20 years. We know with Rosie alone that that's obviously not always the case. Rosie is 30 years and showing no signs of slowing down. These guys just live for so long and haven't been pets for that long that no one really has like a solid concrete idea of just how long they live. Because kind of like when people get parrots, tarantula pets sometimes outlive their owners, and they just live for so long, it's honestly kind of hard to track. And, any sort of scientific study is going to take 20, 30, maybe 40 years. So spider that lives the longest, definitely various species of tarantulas. I don't know if one species lives longer than the other, but maybe if you guys are interested in spiders, that might be something you do research on when you get older. Great question. I love it.
We have time for one more question if y'all have one from the class.
You guys are such good sticks. Look at you guys.
Another, how long typically do the stick, they call it stick bugs, or how long can they live that you showed from Vietnam today?
How long can the stick insects live? They're basically the opposite side of the super long-lived tarantula coin. These guys, this particular species, lives about 5 to 7 months, so not even a year old, which is why they grow so big so quickly, because they've got to get big and lay eggs very, very fast. Even though parthenogenesis, that cloning that I talked about, is a really cool survival strategy and a really good way to make babies if you don't have males around, it does come with a lot of downsides. One of the upsides of, let's say boy and girl insects making babies together is that they have a lot of genetic tools to fight against things that might hurt them or make them sick, diseases. If you are cloning yourself and just making copies of yourself over and over and over and over again, if you are particularly weak or susceptible to a disease or something like that, it's going to hurt you and it's going to hurt all of your clones because you don't have the tools to beat that kind of stuff. So even though that cloning is a super crazy cool way of surviving, it does have its own downsides. And a lot of times animals that can do that only do it in really, really, really bad conditions and don't live very long as a result. So getting really deep into genetics and life cycles here, but I'm very impressed that you guys are asking these questions. Love it.
All right, that is our time for today. If you have additional questions, don't hesitate to email Beth Nelson, and
Yeah.
she can get us those questions, and we will answer them to the best of our abilities. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us today virtually. I know I really enjoyed it, and Stephen always has a great time
Always.
getting to work with our animals. So once again, thank you all. We hope you have an absolutely wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you guys. See you next time. Bye-bye. Got some research to do.
Well, thank you so much. Y'all say thank you. Okay. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.